Support comes from the Rosa Parks Museum on Troy University's Montgomery campus. Located on the spot of Mrs. Parks' historic 1955 arrest and featuring exhibits that chronicle the history of the Montgomery bus boycott. More information at troy.edu/Rosa Parks.
From Troy Public Radio, this is In Focus, and I'm Carolyn Hutchison. If you're a fan of Disney's Pirates of the Caribbean series, you may be surprised to learn that the ship, the Black Pearl, was built on the Alabama coast. Al Jones, who is the Alabama Forestry Commission's Senior Economic Development Representative, found the shipbuilder, and he shares the story. Al Jones, thanks for joining us today.
You're welcome, Carolyn, and I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to your audience.
Al, we have been having so much fun with sort of a mini-series. I'd like to name that mini-series Pirates of the Panhandle, because we're talking about the pirates that plied the waters of the Gulf Coast. You have a fascinating article in Alabama's Treasured Forest magazine called Woods to Goods, Pirate Ship Edition. It brings the story forward. How did you get into this?
In a previous career, I did disaster recovery after Hurricanes Ivan and Katrina. And I was down in Bayou Battery, and I was driving over the bridge there in Bayou Battery, the drawbridge, and I saw the back of a pirate ship sticking out from Steiner Shipyard. And I didn't know anything about it. And I was just thinking to myself, what is a pirate ship doing in Bayou Battery? I filed it away in the back of my mind. And then later I saw an article that said that the Black Pearl from the Pirates of the Caribbean movies was actually built in Bayou Battery. And I assumed that must have been it. And it was. That was the pirate ship that was there.
So, Al, after you filed away that sighting in your mind, what happened later?
So move forward several years to work at the Forestry Commission, and we have a meeting every quarter to talk about articles that we could write. And I was asked to do one, basically Woods to Goods, exactly what the part of the title there is. And I asked, well, does anybody know that the pirate ship from Pirates of the Caribbean was built there in Bayou Battery, Alabama? Not everybody had the opportunities I've had to go to different places in Alabama and see stuff like that, but they were really surprised to hear that. And they said, please, that sounds like a good article. And that's exactly where it started.
So, Al, we find out in the article that this is all about wood, of course.
Right.
You looked into this. You found that the Steiner family was 3 generations building wooden ships. Why was this Black Pearl built out of cypress?
Cypress is a very strong wood that it's what a lot of ships were made from even back in the days of the Spanish galleons that were turned into pirate ships. When it's in the water, it's going to be there. I did a previous article for the Treasured Forest magazines. There is a cypress forest under the Gulf, about 60 miles off of Gulf shores, and they've studied that wood there, and it still is good as it was when it was buried 60+ thousand years ago. So cypress is a very good shipbuilding material.
Back to this family shipyard. You must have contacted the family, and what did you find?
I found them to be very receptive and excited to share information. People have done interesting articles about it, but not in depth about both the ship and the family. Once I met the grandfather, Mr. Russell Steiner, he's long retired, but his passion for that ship and everything that went into it and his willingness to immediately say yes to the Disney Channel when they asked him to build that ship, even though he had never built a pirate ship, is just a great family story. It shows the resilience of the people of coastal Alabama, that they have that can-do attitude of, yes, whatever it is, we can do it and we'll make it work and it will be a great outcome.
So, how did the Steiner family go about building this pirate ship?
The ship that it was built on, called the Sunset. When Disney called Mr. Steiner, they said, "Do you have a ship that we could use, that a pirate ship could be built around?" And he said, "Yes, I owned a ship and it's in Honduras now, and I think it would be perfect for what you're looking for." When he told Disney people that, they immediately sent their designers and engineers down to Honduras, and they came back with the Sunset. It was a very small ship. It's a metal ship, and they built a ring of steel around that little ship, and the entire Black Pearl is kind of a veneer that's just built around that metal frame.
And I think you said it was 160 feet long. What really struck me about your article in the Treasured Forest magazine, you talk about the legacy of a vanishing Gulf Coast craft. Old school craftsmanship using wood. Now, today, these boats are not all built by wood, right?
That is correct. The Steiners use steel in basically all the ships they build, and so do most of the other shipbuilders around Battle of Battery and the Gulf Coast and everywhere. Wood is not used much for shipbuilding anymore. Steel lasts so much longer, so much more durable. It is shocking to me that when the Steiners were asked to build this ship, the answer was an immediate yes. This long ago experience they had that had kind of faded into the background, they were still prepared to step forward when it was needed, and as you can see from the movies, do an outstanding job.
You were determined to track down what happened to the Black Pearl. What happened to it?
That is a very interesting story. The ship, after it stopped being used for Pirates of the Caribbean movies, was sent down to the Caribbean, just like the title of the movies. It was sent to the Caribbean, to a resort down there that the Disney cruise lines go to. It was there for the guest of the cruise line, as I understand it, even to get off of the ship they were on and go on shore and then get aboard the Black Pearl and look around. Obviously, it was not kept seaworthy while it was docked there for tourists, and it got to a point that it really was not usable for anything anymore. And it was towed back from the Caribbean to Louisiana, and there is where it was actually disassembled. And as I understand it, and as the Steiners believe, the only piece of it left is now lying at the Welcome to Lafitte, Louisiana sign. The rest of it is completely gone and totally destroyed.
Well, is there any historical reference to this ship in that welcome area?
As far as I know, there is no reference to it whatsoever. It's just a piece of a ship laying next to the side of the road. If somebody were to happen to go to Lafitte, Louisiana, and see that piece of a ship lying there next to that sign, I would love to have a picture of it. And I would like to kind of put an exclamation point at the end of the story if I could actually see what's left of that ship.
Is there anything else you'd like to add to your story?
I just wish that this kind of thing could happen more often, that the use of wood to make ships could continue on. I know that it's not the most viable way to do things now, but I sure hate to see this great industry go away, the use of wood in shipbuilding. I just think it's fascinating. I think it's beautiful, as you can see from the pictures of the ship in the article. It was a fantastic ship, and to think that that's a dying art is really sad.
Al, thank you so much for your time today and for sharing this story. And again, the listeners can find it in the issue number 1, 2026, Alabama's Treasured Forest, a publication of the Alabama Forestry Commission. Thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn. I appreciate the opportunity.
That was Al Jones, Senior Economic Development Representative at the Alabama Forestry Commission. Thanks for joining us today for In Focus, which is a podcast wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Carolyn Hutchison, and this is Troy Public Radio.